These people are confused. This needs to love God stronger. Do I love God more? Do I love me more? Call it the street Jesus.
Live from the Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're coming from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper.
We sure are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
I had some technical things I was working on. Don't draw attention to it.
I won't.
Hey, man, you draw attention to it by randomly stopping.
Here's what we got. No, there's music playing. This seems normal.
Halfway through second service, half our board went out last week.
What, really?
They just kept singing.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And then some dude went up and Lindgren was here, and they put his mic down on his guitar so you could hear it because that's one of the things that went out.
Right.
You just keep going.
Yeah.
Just
Keep on rocking. You don't be like, hey, everybody, please pay attention. I'm moving my microphone to the guitar.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Kevin Lindgren, he's going to be here next week. He's got a Kickstarter
Heck yeah.
for a brand new album coming out, and so he's going to drop by in the studio. We haven't checked in with Kevin in quite a while up here in the studio.
I was on his Kickstarter thing today, and I was going to give some money, and I didn't yet.
Dan, that was a phenomenal story.
Get it all out this week.
So I'm gonna
What
do it
are
this
the
week before it
commitments
comes
have you
in.
half done this week, Dan?
Well, I was looking at it going, oh, what level do I want to be? This is
man,
I got
yeah.
to put some thoughts
Give
on this.
$1,000 to be at the apostle level?
I mean, I want to be I want to be the best. But the best, he has some big expectations to be the best.
Oh man, yeah, that is rough. I saw there was somebody else that I was familiar with that was doing a Kickstarter, and like some of these prizes were like really lofty, and I thought, like, I would like to give them that much money, but I actually don't want this thing to happen that they're going to say. They're like,
I don't want a jet ride.
hey, we'll do a house show and in combination like an art party, and I'm like,
Sounds awful.
Live in your bedroom.
can I drop off $5 and not do the art party?
Sounds terrible.
Anyway, new segment this week: regrets with Dan.
Things I could have done.
I almost gave money to people. Almost.
The thought about it.
All right, here was good coming on the show tonight. I read this article and I thought it was a good reminder. It was from Francis Chan, and he said that he baptized his best friend after 30 years of praying that he'd find Jesus. It's a good reminder of the long suffering. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to hit up 2 of the 10 theses on Bible, poverty, and justice from our friend Matthew Loftus. We didn't get to that last week, so we're going to hit up 2 this week, and we're just going to go through these 10 and say, hey, look, do we agree with this? And make our way through our understanding of what is probably a I think where a lot of the gray area discussion goes on the Christian understanding in America between social justice, government, church responsibility, and how we view people all end up kind of in this bucket. And so continued discussion in that realm is probably healthy. So that's where we're going to hit these and see what we can come to.
So I met some gals this week at the convention I went to, a missions convention.
That's not what those conventions are for, Dan.
Well,
You're not there to pick up ladies.
I didn't pick them up. They would not have been interested. I had a vest. It was a social justice booth. Right? So that's what we think.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to talk to these gals because they might probably have something really fun. And like they're all like 20-something, and they're all like in black and gray. And I thought they just kind of almost have a social justice look. And
It's brutal.
I'm sure that's what they're going
I'm just
for,
saying,
Dan.
they had the look. They had that vibe. I was upstairs in this skywalk thing looking down, and you're supposed to kind of pray. So I was like praying for people, and they kept catching my eye. I prayed for them a few times. So I went down and said, hey, been praying for you. I want to know what you do. And I got like nothing. It was like,
Oh, no.
We do interns. I'm like, oh, so yeah, we just send interns around. I'm like, I didn't get it. So I got some information. I haven't read it yet, and I'll pass it on to you guys.
Dan, this is
Regrets with Dan.
another
Regret
half
number 2.
commitment.
Both stemming from the convention. No, the first one.
You
was
know,
not.
I tell you what I would do. I would pay up to $1 a day to subscribe to the newspaper that Dan writes for.
Oh, yeah.
Byline. I stopped by this place. Full story.
It was going to be great.
I don't have all the information yet.
I was underwhelmed.
Article 2. I was going to donate to this thing, but I didn't.
Actually, so that's an interesting point because I think that's where a lot of people get burned or turned off on, like, the phrase social justice it's attached to a bunch of community organizing, interning, show
do
up and
things in
protest,
community and blah,
walk
blah,
and
blah.
show up to the convention.
So you do anything? No.
That. Yes.
So can I have an intern? It's like,
Yeah.
well, we send them places.
Will they just come and work for me just to go somewhere else to a convention? Because
Yeah, I mean, they were sweet. I mean,
Sure.
they were nice people, and I just probably didn't have the right questions, to be honest, because I hit a wall. I thought, I don't know what to ask you, other than what do you do? Nothing.
here's the thing: is of the of
That was the best I had. My opening gambit
Yeah.
denied.
That wasn't like a top tier interview question.
What do you do?
That's why I'm on this side of the microphone.
Dan, I would pay to follow you around with a camera and just watch you walk around to booths and interview them. Like, what do you guys do? Okay,
we have one
next booth.
Dan
What
got
do
an
you guys
interview with
do?
the chicken woman.
Yeah, and I would have pursued that better. But it was so loud, I figured it was going to be really bad audio. It wasn't good audio. I had my microphone in the hotel 3 blocks away.
yeah.
and I was disappointed I didn't bring it.
We
'cause
got-
next year. I'm gonna have fun. With
Dan's
that.
gonna be ready. He's
Oh.
gonna be ready. It's gonna be great.
We're going to the Ukraine in 2 years.
Oh, sweet.
For the missions conference?
No, just
Just to go to the
a
Ukraine.
separate pathway group. I'm going to keep doing Zimbabwe. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just switched gears. I went back. I was on my path. I'll be quiet. You guys do your show.
I'm actually an intern for people that go to Ukraine.
I'm looking for interns right now.
They won't let me go in until I get a pair of black sweats.
All right, so
The
we're
neutral
just
colors
now,
open.
hold
Long
on.
trench coats.
Before we leave this activist thing, I was reading a sweet article this week about the people that were vandalizing like the pipeline, that were getting the tar sands out, and shipping them across. And like I read this super interesting article that the big thing that they were trying to prove, they were purposely trying to get arrested so they could go to court. And it was, I can't remember the name of the defense, but it's a defense that you would use to say, I had no other choice but to commit this crime because all legal options had been exhausted, and therefore this was a rightful act, and it's a legal defense in court. But people with that are involved in activism try to use this all the time. And the folks they were up in Minnesota, and it was the pipeline that come down from Canada, and they cut the chain to the gate, and they went in there, and they were basically gonna shut off the main pipeline that was coming down from the tar sands. And so they called the pipeline company ahead of time and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shut down the main pipeline just for safety reasons. You should know that's what we're doing. And then basically all they did is end up, spinning this. I don't know if you've ever seen a pipeline valve, but it takes, literally like 10 minutes to move these things. Like they're super low geared because they're so big.
Oh, well,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
you just sit, it just takes forever to wheel this thing around. And so eventually the sheriff shows up and arrests him and whatever. And the whole reason that they did any of it, because it actually didn't affect the pipeline at all. They remotely shut the valves down as soon as they knew the people were there. So they were shutting it anyway in a controlled fashion. But anyway, they ended up arresting him, and it was just a huge plot to be able to get into court and use this whatever defense that says, hey, I tried to exhaust this through government reasons, through hiring or voting for different senators, and no one's listening to me, and so I had to commit this crime.
Nobody agreed, so I had to make it happen.
And it got thrown out of every court in the United States except for Minnesota. And Minnesota gave them a foothold where they said, we're going to allow this, and they gave him a slap on the wrist and kicked him out, but they set a legal precedent
Right.
where activists can now say, look, there's legal precedents here that someone's been allowed to use this defense.
Now, does
Yep,
that mean
that's
I
case
can go-
law now.
Oh, sorry. Does that mean I can go shut down an abortion clinic?
Well, if you've
Because I tried everything legally and it didn't work.
but that's the whole name of the defense.
It's whatever. I don't agree with X church, so we're gonna go shut them down.
Yeah,
Or-
and so it's a scary, slippery slope, something. But and you'd have a hard time, obviously, with the abortion clinics because it's legal, and so, but like it's also legal to run a pipeline,
yeah.
and so it was a super interesting article, and like these ladies were like 55 and 60, and they're like, I don't care, put me in jail a couple years, my kids are grown, I'm good.
I don't like the speed limit. I couldn't get anybody to change it. I'll do it myself. Just go 150.
But once again, you put it in the same category as stuff that people are passionate about and spending their life doing, and then you look at some of our half-hearted efforts to get people to know Jesus, and you go, we suck.
Yeah, would I be willing to go to jail for Jesus?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's modern day Pauls out there shutting down the pipeline for what they believe in, and we
Right.
go, I can't be bothered. Maybe I'll get here today. Maybe
It's
I
going to
won't.
be awkward if I get donuts at the Casey's anymore if I go there. If I talk to Randy about Jesus.
Randy will go, meh. Look, it's goat Jesus, man.
It's go Jesus,
he
man.
loves
Meh.
Jesus.
I just want this French cruller, bro.
Hey, so I found this, Dan. It's called Love Thy Neighborhood from Louisville. It's from Louisville.
From Louisville. Yep.
Yeah.
This is my picture.
Oh wait, hold on. Okay. Oh, was that what you were trying to get me to do?
Well, no, I was just.
Okay, hold on. All right, hold on. There it goes. There they are down there. Love Thy Neighborhood.
Yeah.
They're all in black.
They're
Man,
not.
think
even
they
the
didn't
guy
answer your
visiting
questions
the
because
booth is wearing black. You see that?
Yeah, the guy visiting. It attracted all the gods. That's why I came up in my vest and said, "Hey."
Dan, I think I know why they didn't answer your questions.
You think so?
That approach and then you taking pictures of them
It's a creepy.
was
old
never a
guy.
good way to do things.
I said I was above looking down on you, praying for you.
Creepy.
Little
Oh man,
girl.
yeah, that's still Dan. That's terrifying.
That was terrible.
Interesting. So
What do they do?
What they do? So they do.
Interns.
They call it social justice internships, and so essentially what you're doing, it costs money. It's like you're supposed to raise like $10,000 for the year, but like you end up going in increments of like 10 or 11 weeks, and you live in kind of a group setting with other people like same gender, same age, and you spend like half your day volunteering in various like tracks. So places designed to help with homelessness, book editing and publishing.
So I'm thinking, can't you do that for free?
Yes. Yes,
That's what
yes, you can.
Yes.
We've poked a hole in their plan.
Yes, you can.
I just listen to him going,
It would be weird if Paul was in Ephesus on an internship. You know?
I need to raise some money to go to Ephesus so I can volunteer.
That brings up a good point. Is like this goes back to the conversation we were having about giving to money overseas, right?
Yeah.
It's people who have the right heart and they're
Right.
well intentioned, but we're not getting the most the most value out of our effort.
Yeah.
Out of our money, out of our time. Like, as a matter of fact, like the risk for a lot of these, for programs like these are like we're constantly preparing people to live in an environment of which they don't actually live.
Like
When-
college.
When you could just live, right?
Exactly.
Like I get to Dan's point, like,
Just do it.
Can't you just do it for free?
See, I felt like them looking at my generation going, what? Why do you do that?
Yeah, right.
Oh, because we do that. No, but we don't need you to do that.
Well, right. It's not,
You know, because I kind of thought, oh, wait, I should be on the other side of the table. And they should be talking to me. But
You know, yeah, okay, because so I know multiple people that have had this experience, right? Like they met Jesus at like a summer camp or something, you know, where you're surrounded by a bunch of other people that are there for the same reason, and like people are giving their lives over to Jesus, like at the evening service. I remember that at summer camp, and it was awesome. I got crying. I'm like, yeah, this is great, you know. And then you get back home, and even like Jake, who was in last week, was talking about this, and it just kind of, it has this weird skydive, and it's because like we never actually put people through the paces of what it feels like, or what it looks like, or what it is like to live a Christ-centered life, not surrounded in like this bubble of craziness, right? Like at the end of the day, your internship put you here, and you can leave if you want to. But what happens when you do the exact same thing rooted in your own life, where you got to keep down some kind of job? The money that's going to buy whatever you're looking to buy is coming from you, you know, or somebody you know, and there's some accountability built into it because you know the person you're saying you're raising money from. You know, so it's the same thing when you do stuff like that at work or at school or whatever, and you walk around and you say, hey, I'm raising money to do this. I mean, you're going to run into these people again. They're going to want to know what you did with the money. And so there is a little bit of, it's not bad. It's not like it's all labeled bad, but it is a bang for our buck thing. When you organize it like you're doing, it's like this safe, well, I'm here on a mission trip, or I'm here on an internship, and whatever. It's like, instead of, this is my life. This is what I do, you know, this is me all the time, and I get to know people, and they know me, and like it's a consistent. This is how I live, and so yeah, I totally see the heart benefit to what you're saying, but like you're right, the black and white. Have we thought this through? Like the brains that God's given us to say, how can we do the most, or how can we do any? You know, maybe it gets lost in that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they're not going to want to talk about that. It'd be awkward to invite them in and say, I don't know if I agree with your program.
Well, I mean, maybe it's worth some of that conversation is we're having to say, like, why doesn't this work? Like, why are we doing things like, is this necessary? Like, is this necessary because people won't do it on their own? Like, are we creating half steps
We can
because
do it.
they can't? Yeah, they could. Like, that's the ideal state, but people don't. So the church facilitates a way for them to make progress to a lifestyle that they otherwise, or a way of living that they otherwise wouldn't do, which sounds like discipleship. And so that's okay. I think it's the question of, like, do we look at these? We look at it and say, boy, that's a weird way of life. They look at it and say, maybe they look at it and say, look, here's a path. There's a path to getting there, because people actually don't know the difference.
Yeah, a Kickstarter.
Because maybe I look at I might look at the world a little bit differently for having gone overseas, right? Like, and so to the point of like you learn something and then you can apply it to your own life, and then you can kind of move from there. And so like maybe that's it. But it's interesting to think like, do we run the risk just like we do of kind of how we give overseas and how we do the things that we do even around us? Like, are the things we're doing actually helping? It's the core thing that every business has to ask. And I think Christianity can ask the same thing. It's like the effort and dollars and time that we're putting into things. Like, is it doing what we expect it to do? And if it's not, maybe it don't work. And maybe we can stop doing it.
I didn't consider the fact is like if you go to an underserved portion of Boston and there's no shoe peddler in town, and then we send a shoe peddler to sell shoes, and then everyone goes, well, why don't we just buy from a local shoe peddler? How dare you send this foreign shoe peddler in? Well, the truth is there wasn't a local one, right? And so you're right. Some of my thought process of condemnation of how these things are going, Dan's right. If the people locally were doing it, then there would be no room for the intern to show up and do it. And so it's a broader swath Christian society issue than it is, people just trying to fill in the gaps. We're creating the gaps too. We're creating our own economy, right? Like we're both creating the gaps and the people to fill them.
Yes, that's what's happening.
I'm with you.
Okay. All right, there we go.
Can I tell you about my other one I talked to?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Let's
didn't
hear
really
it.
intend to talk about all this tonight, but there's another little booth I went to, and they're older folks. And I said, well, what do you guys do? She goes, we do revival. Like, what? We travel around and we go to your church and we do a revival. I looked at my watch, and it was not 1975. I was like, really? You really do that? Yes, we do that. We sing, and we have revivals.
Man.
Like,
I mean, did it get you excited?
It did not.
No, it's not. No.
They said, we don't charge anything. We just come do it.
Oh, man.
Sure, they take an offering, but
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, probably.
But I'm
have
like,
to.
have you even heard of a church doing a revival in
Not
20 years?
not anywhere above the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
Within the last 10 decades, 10 years in Mason-Dixon line, no.
Once again, I was speechless.
It's like,
I don't know about that. I feel like people are still doing it up here.
Oh, actually, Sam Rose.
I was gonna say I went to that was in an apartment complex I do security for. And I was walking through and there was a poster up on the billboard that said, or up on their bulletin board that said there was a revival at a church nearby, and they were bringing in pastor blah 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 blah, and he was going to be doing a revival service here soon.
He sounds charismatic.
Yeah, he's great.
What's the biblical precedence for revivals? Right? Is it when they reopened the law and then busted it out and then had a? I mean, that's basically what that was, right? Who was it? Hezekiah? Who was it? Who did it? Who busted the law back out and goes, oh man, we haven't been following this at all.
Hezekiah did.
Yeah.
And they were redoing the wall and everything.
Well,
Or Nehemiah, I mean.
So make it if you generalize it a little bit. I mean, the thought of a traveling guy going from town to town talking to people it certainly has biblical precedent.
Sure.
So I mean, I think there's nothing kind of implicitly. There's nothing implicitly wrong with like having traveling folks go church to church. I think the concept of a revival as a focused thing.
She claimed it will grow the church.
Yeah, so
it will grow your church.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Is it sounds it takes the greatest. Would you hear what I say? Well, here, like it takes the greatest risk in some of what we do to try to draw people into church, and detaches it from the things that help convert that into long-term discipleship, and just makes it that's the only thing. Like it's prone to be, it can be manipulative. It divorces people from the community that's around them. It ties the relationship to Christ to an event as opposed to a community and obviously Jesus. And then it walks away. Whereas Paul, for example, like if Paul's going from town to town, he's creating churches as he goes. Like his intent is to plant churches, of which then he leaves and then comes back and checks on them and then preaches to them, right? But the method isn't just, hey, we come, we show up, we dunk, we baptize, we bring them to the Lord, and then we fade. That's not happening. Although I suppose if they're going church to church, they're intending to connect it to a thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess my concept of revival is probably 20 years old. Like I don't have any concept of what that looks like.
Maybe they have
theirs are too, though.
Maybe they have newfangled revivals that you don't know about, that they're super hip and cool.
The thing is, these conferences, to have a booth there, it's big dollars.
But that's
I mean,
interesting.
hundreds of dollars to have a booth space.
So it's interesting to think that they come to your place for free, and even if they're taking an offering or whatever. Remember, we've talked about it, trouble getting bands to come places because churches just don't pay them very much, and these folks can go around and pick up a decent amount of money and enough to buy a booth at the missions convention. Yeah. Interesting. Hey, so give us your revival experience. Like if you've had an experience with a revival, either in your past or recently, we'd like to hear about it. You can call the complaint line and call 515-517-0085 or send us a text 515-517-0085 and tell us your revival experience. I don't know, Mike, have you been to one?
I think Grandpa did one at a church we were going to when we were little. But I mean, really, he was a guest speaker. It was just, he was the guest speaker.
Yeah.
They called it a revival, but he was just a different guy talking. And most churches actually do that on a decent rotation anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like the head dude will be there for 4 or 5 weeks, and then they'll send another guy in there for a week or so to give him a little break. Yeah, and so this concept of a new guy bringing the word, it's not all that foreign. People plus with media. With podcasts and YouTube, you can get the word delivered by whoever you want. If you want a monkey with one arm preaching you through Luke, you can find it on the YouTube.
He's going to do it.
Yeah,
I'm going to Google that.
It's very specific.
Here's the thing: is that there's certainly now I feel like I'm waving a little bit because there's certainly
I'm for it. I should have one.
No. I guess the things It has the core material to be something that's edifying to the church. Think of the celebrations in the Old Testament, right? Like focused time where the church gets together and said, "Look, we're going to praise God for what He's done. We're going to seek His face and His glory and the direction for things."
It's a shot in the arm. Yeah, they used to do it in 2 weeks in a row. Every single night for 2 weeks, they'd come in and it was big time. Every church did them.
I don't. Is the thing though? Is I suppose if they're saying it's going to grow the church, the focus where it sounds completely edifying to the church is internal.
Yeah.
But then again, we stink at evangelism. So if we're not doing anything else, does the guy in the tent? Do we give him a go at it?
It's like the interns, right? They're filling a gap that we created. Revival Man's filling a gap.
Their something is better than our nothing.
I think what happened is after several years, decades of doing this, people started looking around and saying, "Hey, the people coming to these are just the people in our same fellowship of churches, whatever denomination you're in, that they'd all from that area would come together." So you felt good because, we're really full, but then they all go back to their own churches, and because that's where they're from, and then they'd go, "Well, I guess it didn't really accomplish anything other than it was fun. It was good.
We assessed it as it not actually producing the value that we think. It may have been a beneficial time, but if the point was to grow the kingdom, not celebrate the fact that we could put a tent up and get together, which we could have done anyway. Right. It just comes down to the assessment: is it actually growing the kingdom? And I can't imagine that. Maybe that worked before, but I don't know a man. Not to a man. Could we be like, "Hey, I don't know or love Jesus"?
Yeah.
Hold on. 10-second technical timeout. Okay. Mix.
I don't think you should edit that part.
Okay, we're back in. All right. Anyway,
we've always been in.
I was on a tangent.
We missed the best part.
What was the tangent about?
Hey, here's the thing though. Aren't modern worship bands isn't that basically the traveling revival?
Yeah.
Like a band comes in, it gets set up at a church, then people from all different churches come in, they listen to a night of worship, they sing, and then they all leave and go to back to their regular church. And at the end of the day, wasn't it kind of foolish anyway? These people already love Jesus. You think they're actually going to start coming to your church because you brought a visiting band in? That don't make no sense.
That band might come back.
Their whole community is rooted somewhere else. Why don't you just let them go back? Can't we just get together for a night of celebration? Why do we got to call it something more than it is?
For example, like Life from the Path did a few years ago at Christmas time.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Hey, man, our Christmas album. Hey, it's about time to hawk that again, baby.
Yeah. We've sold 4 copies. If we could get another 3 or 4, that'd be fantastic.
It's good because we get pantsed by another one.
We'll autograph it.
Right, you're right. So those are fun. They're fun things, and like, there's nothing wrong with those things. I
Yeah.
suppose it's the billing of the promises that it's making that like we don't seem to pan out. Like, it's just not like you could accomplish the things that are actually edifying without doing all of that, and probably not having to bring someone in necessarily like these folks. I don't know. Anyway, give us your revival experiences. 515-517-0085 by call or text. That's a Live Friends Path complaint line. So there was an article I read. This is from Christian Post, and it said Francis Chan baptized his best friend after 30 years of praying he'll find Christ. It says Francis Chan has revealed that after 30 years of praying for his best friend to find Jesus Christ, he was finally able to baptize him into the faith a couple of years ago. The Christian pastor, author, and church planner said that prayer is essential in such cases, admitting that his past efforts to convince people through words were ridiculous. He said it's similar to the first time he climbed into a cave and experiencing how pitch dark it was, and compared it to the darkness the Apostle Paul described in 2 Corinthians 4, 3-6. He says, hold on. He says, we all walk in complete spiritual darkness unless God decides to shine the light on us. In some mysterious way, God shines light in a person's heart so that he instantly sees the beauty of the gospel. No amount of human effort can produce this. Salvation is a miracle of God. Many of us would say that we believe this theological truth, but our actions betray us, revealing just how much we trust in people, speeches, and events. On more than one occasion, people have begged me to speak to their lost friends, believing that my words would make the difference. Too often, I've granted their wish rather than correcting their theology, and tried desperately to come up with the perfect words to talk their friends into following love with Jesus. Do you see yet how ridiculous this is? Jan pointed to Jesus' words in Luke 18:1 about how people ought to always pray and not lose heart, and shared of his own 30-year prayer journey for his best friend. And so the description was, my best friend in college decided that he didn't want to follow Jesus. It broke my heart. Ken and I went our separate ways, and our lives went in opposite directions. I never stopped praying for him, though. I couldn't. Whenever Ken's name would pop into my mind, prayer was my natural reflex. 2 years ago, I was speaking in Seattle where Ken lived. I invited him to the event so we could reconnect. We graduated from high school in 1985. After 30 years of prayer, God decided to shine his light on his heart. Suddenly, Jesus looked beautiful to him, and he couldn't believe that he didn't see it all this time. The pastor added. A few weeks later, Ken and his wife flew down to San Francisco, and I baptized them. I can't express what a gift that was. He's one of the few people I've prayed for consistently for 30 years. A small price to pay to be with him for the next 30 million. So I what I thought was cool about that story is I've had that situation more like many times in my life where I felt like I'm supposed to fix this. I'm supposed to do something. And I feel like I've done everything I could possibly do, and I'm like, this isn't working. And it runs the risk of saying, like, hey, the faithfulness in Jesus doesn't work, or God's way that he has ordained that life is to be lived doesn't work. And there's the element here that a man who has obviously accomplished much, God has accomplished much through him in the way for the kingdom for a guy like Francis Chan, and it took his best friend 30 years to come to know Jesus. And I don't know, it was a good reminder that like there have been times when I've transferred God's weight onto my shoulders, and it was too heavy, and of course it would be. And so that was anyway. I was encouraged by that. Would you guys say, have you ever run into something similar?
Of trying to take God's weight on my shoulders?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Super guilty. Super guilty, man.
So I mean, yeah. What's the rub here? Like, why do we do that?
Because you want to do something, right? You think I mean, there's a bit of pride in there that thinking, you know, I will be the one that does this, or you know, like still pointing them to Jesus, but you're like, if they could just hear it in the right way, or they could just be in this situation and take it on. And it's funny, like we talked about this a little bit last week or the week before, something about the way you were reading your Bible, like getting it to know, like reading it to know God instead of what you can get out of it. And like, boy, I got to be real honest. In the last couple of years, I was getting pretty down because like I had tried to talk to Jesus or about Jesus to like, I don't know, 10 dudes, and every single one of them failed. I mean, just blew up in my face, failed terribly. And I'm like, I'm praying at night. I'm like, I have no idea what I am doing wrong here, Lord. I feel like am I not listening to what you're saying? Am I not understanding, you know, how to go about this? Maybe I don't even understand how to make disciples. So I go back and watch and read Jesus' life again. I'm like, okay, I think I got it. You know what I'm saying? Like I was going to come up with something. And it was been in the last couple months, you know, where God goes, look, this has never been about you. This is why you're missing it. You're standing in my way, right? You're on your way to get to me. You're still standing there right in front of what I'm trying to do. And maybe it has nothing to do with the plans that you had come up with, And so like it rings very true that you can't say that I trust Jesus to take all my sins away, but I don't trust him to handle this situation with my friend, right? I don't trust him to handle this situation. And so like you not only have to trust him to do it, you have to actually trust him to do it, which means you have to stop having like anxiety and this fear of dread and like and that you carry around, and like when you run into him, you're like, man, I hope the conversations get steered towards Christ in some way. Maybe I'll bring up this phony thing or whatever, or act like, hey, yeah, by the way, I was at youth group or whatever, and this came up, and the guy starts rolling his eyes, and you're like, man, fail again.
We're so harvest oriented that we forget that maybe our job's just watering or planting.
Somebody got to grow the wheat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's legitimate, equal importance in the kingdom. And God worries about who gets the harvest. We're so focused on I'm a fail if I didn't harvest this person. And like we throw out vast areas of Scripture because we call ourselves failures because we didn't do it. We didn't get to baptize them. We didn't get to whatever. And it's like maybe you said something that you have no idea what you said that made an impact on them, or maybe they just were watching you, and that's what had an impact on them. Who knows?
But that's the thing is I think we fall too much on one side where the risk is that you're like, yeah, I just water, because now you've determined that
you go
too.
The other way.
You've saying I just water, or I just throw a blanket. It's like the dude with the pamphlet or the guy with the sign, that's like, I throw the seeds out everywhere. One of these is bound to stick.
I'm no harvest guy.
Yeah, I'm not a harvest man. I don't do the hard stuff of actually knowing a guy for years. You know what I'm saying? But actually, I don't know that I'm consistent enough on stuff that I pray for. I bet it goes a week and a half maybe, and then I start fading out. I forget completely.
I'm a jerk.
And then they'll fall off the rails or something 3 months later. I'm like, I stopped praying for them. Crap, that's on me. Like, it ain't on me, but I still should have been praying for them.
Yeah.
I think doing youth group and being a leader in youth group has helped me immensely in this, and actually kind of shown me a lot of flaws in this, because when I think back to when I was in youth group, I don't remember the vast majority of the lessons I ever learned. Like, I don't. I don't remember every Wednesday. I don't remember the stuff that went through. I mean, I'm sure that the youth leaders like put a lot of thought into a lot of stuff they said, but I do not remember any of it. But I can tell you certain things that I do remember, and certain things that do come to pass in my mind nowadays. And certain people who used to be my youth leaders that like they may have just shown up to something that meant something, or they may have just been there for me. And it wasn't about all of that work. It was the fact that they were willing to just be there. They weren't the one that harvested. They may not have been the one that even was really growing me. They may have just been saying random things to keep me out of trouble every Wednesday. That's where I was. But nowadays, I can look back on that and say, it may not have been life-changing things they're saying, but it was them being willing to be there. I see that now when I teach youth group. Like, I put thought and heart into these lessons and stuff like that, and then I ask them the next week what we learned about, and they go, I don't know. Like,
Yeah. Sounds good.
okay, well, what did we talk about last week? They're like, Mark 1. I'm like, yeah, okay. What about Mark 1? What did we learn? Jesus was there. I'm like, oh, good, guys. Sweet. I'm glad we're doing this. But like, I realize, a lot of the work that I may be putting in, it doesn't mean I'm going to change the fact that I work hard every week. It also means that there's a chance that me showing up to their band practice or their band recital, me showing up to a football game, being there when they're having troubles, praying for them. I'm trying to do a good job of lessons, but I don't think I'm doing a great job of praying for them. And like, that's where that meets at is like, I'm trying to take the place of, well, Jesus should be important in your life, and here's why. And I'm not doing it right. I should be taking a step back and being like, how can I trust God to handle this? He's got me here to do a job, but like, how can I actually be asking God to handle this and not for me?
Well, I think that goes back to what Mike was saying. Is like, hey, why do we do that? Well, we feel like we want to do something. We want to get something done, and like, as if praying for them isn't doing something. Like that's where that feels to me like I'm just saying, God, nothing for me here. This is the best I can do. When like, really, it's the best I can do.
Yeah.
Right. And so frankly, it comes down to it's a relationship issue. It's a faithfulness issue that says God says like, I don't have to know how it works. I just know that like this solves problems. This is where if things are going to happen, they're going to happen here. and then and then we make the most of every opportunity that we can, whether it's sowing, whether it's harvesting, like whatever it is, and watching the not doing the buckets, but like where it's not focused or centered on God makes the way. Then yeah, you're going to feel like you're fighting your own path because you are, and you can't be surprised when it produces kind of your level of results.
We so underestimate the spiritual connection of everything we do. I should do a study on this sometime, just to make me feel good. But I mean, like, just look at scripture of the things you don't think about that have spiritual implications. Get along with your wife so it doesn't hinder your prayers. Like, well, what does that have to do with my prayer?
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these little connections here that have total spiritual, effect with something else that you're doing. And, like you say, the biggest thing you be doing is praying for the youth group, right? And praying for the kids and praying for the people in your care. But that's not tangible. We can't look at it and feel it and touch it, So we're like, yeah, I'll do that I'll do that as I'm falling asleep. But,
right.
I don't know if I'm going to put time to it,
You know how this life whooped was Abram, because the Lord promised him a son, and for Abram to do his part, he has to say, "Look, woman, we got to help the Lord in this deal." You know what I'm saying? Like Abram had this. Like of all the things that we try to say, look, we got to help God with the thing. Like no one can save Steve unless we send a guy to talk to Steve. Someone's got to go talk to Steve. But Abram, I mean, what a solid position,
Okay. No one has any reaction to that Abram thing, Mike.
It just occurred to me, and I thought it was super interesting.
I
thought it was clever, Mike.
Grasp what you were saying. Like what part of what?
He gets to have sex with his wife a lot.
That's what I thought you were saying, but I didn't want to go there because
that's what I'm getting at.
I didn't want to be all junior high about it.
No, that's exactly
usually
where I was going.
So okay, good.
I mean, we're like, hey,
I'm proud of my maturity.
We got to go visit people, and Abram's like, look, the Lord promised his baby was going to happen.
Let's go
we
do
obviously.
this.
What if it's today? We obviously got to do it. Yeah.
Haven't heard yes yet. Okay.
Keep having it.
All right, let's look at these. So here were the 10 theses.
Let's talk about Abram having sex with his wife.
No, that's right. We're gonna let that go. That's the 515-517-0085.
I was going to say, if you want to say something to us on the complaint line.
If your name's Abram and you're not getting enough action at home, give us a call.
Sweet Moses.
There ain't no booth for that at the missionary.
There should be. All right. So this was an article by Matthew Loftus at Mere Orthodoxy called 10 Theses on Bible, Poverty, and Justice. And he says, Peter Morin and Dorothy Day wrote about building the kind of society where it is easier for people to be good. While Morin and Day were very much against statism and would probably disagree with a number of the points below, I found their turn of phrase about easier for people to be good quite compelling with regards to justice and righteousness. Thus, I have formulated 10 theses below on the subject to discuss. Each of them could be an essay of its own, but I've limited the discussion to a paragraph for each. Here we go. Number one. So our reaction is to say, hey, do we agree with these, that this is ultimately the right thesis on the kind of society where it's easier for people to be good, cross-section of the Bible, justice, and poverty. Number one, human governments are ordained by God to uphold justice and are accountable to God for their actions. Here's the description. Despite their frequent failures to honor God and his law, human governments are ordained by God for the sake of upholding justice. God will judge all the nations of the earth and their rulers according to their deeds. The responsibility of the church on earth is to remind our rulers that their authority has been given for a purpose, and they will be held accountable for it. When the church proclaims Jesus is Lord, politicians ought to inspire fear and self-examination because they are reminded that they are ultimately vassals and stewards of Jesus' reign. That rightly understand governments and people. Core thought again. Human governments are ordained by God to uphold justice and are accountable to God for their actions.
And they're defining justice, making sure everybody's fed and clothed.
No, he did not provide any additional
We're putting
description
that
there.
filter on it ourselves.
Dan's going to put it on there. So biblically, this is biblically accurate. To the extent that is why governments are there. That's Paul's description of what governments are for, not Dan's added lens aside. That God has instituted governments with a responsibility for both with a responsibility and an accountability for what they do.
So is it to say that God has set up the system of government and basically the same thing like when he talks to people being teachers of the scripture that says, look, not everybody has to be a teacher, but if you're gonna, this is what I'm gonna hold you accountable to. Is that what we're saying the same thing about governments?
I'd similarly, yes. I think that's
not. I put Pol Pot in place.
Right. It's just like the station itself.
Okay.
So I think the prime reference will be Romans 13. Let every person be subject to governing authorities, for there's no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. So actually, that would include the justice element of kind of what you're talking about, is that they're collecting taxes to be ministers of God. And that doesn't seem to me like it's exclusive of wrath or justice, right? That's carried in the first half of that section. Pay all to what is owed them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. Human governments are ordained by God to uphold justice and are accountable to God for their actions.
I still don't quite understand this. Are we saying that this always confused me. So the people that are terrible in power, say Stalin. This verse is talking about him? No. Yes. Help me.
No.
This is saying the system of government God has put in place. Agreed.
Yeah,
but not says, look, if Hitler says this is what we're going to do, you best fall in line.
Yes, he has strayed from the purpose.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. People can ruin the system that is the government. That's the problem. Government itself is ordained by God and is
the fact, basically, if you want to think of it in a broad concept, it's God is pro authority. He is pro systems of governing or infrastructure of people. Some people having the added responsibility and accountability, but also the authority to govern others for their own sake and to according to God's justice and means and ways.
Okay, so I feel like I've heard this misused quite a bit, actually. Almost with those, especially America, right? Because we have so much choice involved with our government. That it is actually our responsibility to pick the guy that we're going to do, generally. And so I've heard a lot of people misuse this stuff that say, look, this is the deal. God put them in. Like whoever happened to be elected president this year was put there by the Lord. You know what I'm saying? And like that's not necessarily what we're saying here. We're saying the system in place was instituted by God, but like the specific people, not necessarily.
I mean, that starts to bend to your theology. Like the more that you think that God is otherwise directing all those things specifically, like there's less of a concept of free will than it says God did it. But
Gotcha.
And then there's other scripture that kind of refers to
like specific folk.
God put people in those kind of and stuff together. Yeah,
I gotta be honest, you haven't cleared this up for me at all.
Thanks.
I was looking for some clarity here so I can move on with my life in a purposeful way.
My reaction to this would be yes. I think human governments are ordained by God, and I think they are to. It is their responsibility to uphold justice, and they are accountable to God for their actions. Yes.
So what's the point of this of the thesis then? Is that something that you think we broadly misunderstand?
Yeah. So I think the point I think he's trying to build like an understanding of how we should rightly understand ourselves, like the church, the government authorities. And the types of needs that are out there, and then ultimately, like how those interact. Like I think they all combine to try to have a broad conversation. And so the question is like, are there elements that we can accept or reject as we go? And so like I don't have any problem accepting this one. Dan, do you still have hesitance because of the definition of justice?
I guess I just need clear definitions of how they're using things to know. The larger the government, the more difficult it is to do these things, because you just can't. I can't I can't tell you if the person 3 blocks away is cheating the system or it truly needs help. I think the government should help people who truly need help. How do they keep from corrupting the system? The larger it is, the easier it is to corrupt, and then you're wasting. And you're like, you're actually hurting people, and yeah. So, but I think government should be involved.
So Dan's hesitant on the prescription if it prescribes justice and how far it extends. So we'll see. Let's look at some of the other theses and we'll see if it helps to clarify that point.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2 was justice is not merely about rights. The best human society is one in which acting righteously is most accessible to as many people as possible. Here's the discussion. Liberal society in the West today primarily thinks of justice in terms of positive or negative rights, usually more of the latter than the former, especially among right-wing classical liberals. However, this is an anemic standard of justice. Throughout the Bible, we encounter a vision of judgment and justice that certainly includes not depriving others of what they deserve, but more fundamentally envisions a society in which our relationships with God and one another are whole, and our actions towards one another and God are righteous. Biblical justice is not merely the absence of rights violations in society, but it is the inclusion of all people in that society in a life of righteous behavior and true worship. A just society, then, is one in which the powers that society possesses are used to direct people towards righteous and just behavior rather than merely catching violations of rights after the fact.
Oh, I feel like this is above my head, Ben.
Yep, I was just about to say the same thing.
So look at the last sentence. I think is the core. A just society is one in which the powers that the society possesses are used to direct people towards righteous and just behavior rather than merely catching violations of rights after the fact. So, should we think of justice as not only punishment of wrong behavior, but should we consider also that justice is the setting up of your society in such a way,
encouraging,
yes, that has the best opportunity for righteous behavior, right relationships between people and God? Is that do we consider that part of ultimately? I think this is where it ties to number 1, part of the government's purvey.
I mean, maybe it depends on what because of the floating. It's because of the floating definition of righteous, I guess. I mean, I know what I think it is, but what other people feel to be righteous in society.
So ignore the specifics of the definition of righteous to the extent that it can be defined. Let's assume that we could agree on a definition. Do we agree that justice encapsulates both stopping negative behavior and getting the best opportunity for the positive behavior, or the righteous behavior?
I mean, I suppose, you'd have to give me a solid example of where I wouldn't think that.
I would have to say I do think so, because I get upset when they take down laws that try to encourage positive behavior. If they allow homosexual marriage, that means they used to say that's not healthy, don't do it. Now they say, do what you want. Then I look at that as societal breakdown as opposed to, I don't know, not supposed to, but I mean, where before the government was doing its job to protect us from ourselves, now it's saying you do whatever you want, even if it just leads to destruction, because they've lost the definition of righteous.
Yeah.
So because I get upset by that, probably tells me I think that is government's job.
So,
partly.
And so the question, I suppose, is does that extend outside of laws? So if the government has the responsibility as part of in encouraging justice to otherwise point people to direct people toward righteous and just behavior, that power that they have outside of creating a law to keep people from things, should they be using its resources or its power outside of laws to direct people towards those things? I think this is getting closer to, Dan, what you were concerned about in item 1, which is if we have why do we, if that's a government responsibility, why do we stop at only laws? If the government has the power and influence to otherwise direct or make it so they have the best opportunity for righteous behavior, should they not use it even outside of laws?
For example, so like as definitions have shifted over the years, the government now will use fees and intimidation to shut down a bakery that doesn't do what they think is righteous, which would be baking a cake
Right.
for a gay marriage. They're imposing their view of righteousness on someone, force them to do what they want. They being government, this vague.
Yes. Right. It's not just a law. It's some other method of influence.
Which is probably where I waver and go back to, no, I don't think the government should be involved because you can't trust the government. From generation to generation.
So this is the rub, and I think this is the rub where we've run into a few times, right? It's the specificity of do we, not whether the government has or should use the responsibility or power that they have, but whether they're capable of doing it well.
If they agree with me, then I'm all for it.
Well, of course.
I think that's the difficulty.
That will likely be the continued rub, actually, as it goes. Okay. We're going to stop at 2.
Boy,
That's heavy.
I feel dumb.
These are, yeah.
I can't even process when you read more than one sentence. I'm still trying to get through the first one going, I'm not sure what I think there.
I
or
kind of
what it
shifted
means.
toward some software I'm thinking about buying, I have to admit. I thought, wait a minute. we're talking about something here.
Yeah, I was in an ethics course over the summer, my last semester at college.
The third paragraph.
I literally,
like, whoa, Dilly.
yeah, exactly. I took an online ethics course, which was an awful decision.
This is
And
why the government's where it is.
And
People like us are voting.
I feel like when Ben read that, I was like, wow, I wonder if Ben's an ethics instructor. No.
All right, boys. I'm going to send you this link. We're going to see if we can digest it over a week.
I like your optimism that thinking time's going to help.
Yes,
Buva passed this ethics course, I imagine.
I did.
Okay, well then,
Actually
Buva
got
should
a
at
very
least
good
be
score.
paying attention.
Actually, this'll work out good.
Wait, hold on. We forgot one thing.
Okay.
Buva's got the youth group question of the week.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
youth group question of the week. So in youth group last week, I was actually stopped by one of my younger gals. She's probably 12, 13 years old. And I kind of encourage oddball questions, if you will. We go through a certain set of scripture every week, or we'll go through a title, topic, and then I kind of allow, harebrained offshoots of questions, because a lot of times they develop even better discussion than when I just have a lesson plan, like to follow this rabbit. And so I was asked a question, and I thought to myself, I could probably answer it, but do I know my biblical backing on the question, and would I feel comfortable answering it? And so I thought to myself, I want to bring it to a group of dudes that I know read their Bibles and can vet out certain things, and I want to see what you guys think. And then we'll figure it out. So the question I was asked was, do babies go to heaven? Okay, so very simple question. Do babies go to heaven? Now, I'm certain that everyone has their own little answer to that and has a quick answer.
It's actually a bit of a Pandora's box, Buva.
Right, and so that's why I stopped myself, and I thought to myself, do I have a quick answer in my head? Yes, but is it right? Have I gone through the right things to make certain that I am biblically sound in this, or even close to? And so I wanted to bring that question to you guys and ask you, as fellow Christ followers, do babies go to heaven?
Dan, if you had, I assume you've had to deal with this.
Oh, yeah.
Funerals and such.
Matter of fact, I did a funeral once where the mother of an infant, the infant passed away, and was just in tears in the little room right prior to the funeral, because a relative, an aunt or something, came in and said, your baby's in hell because you didn't have that baby baptized. Explanation of the because we are not judged on Adam's sin, we're judged on our sin. Baby has not sinned. They're innocent and pure, and until they rebel against God, there's no sin that separates them from God. So of course they're in.
Okay.
And so the theological divisions start to begin here. Like if you were Reformed tradition would generally say that we are sinful from the womb, pulling from Psalms, known as innocent, no, not one, things like that. And so that the baby does inherit Adam's original sin, and so is sinful even then.
Which is why they baptize babies.
That's why they baptize babies, yeah. And so
Did you say the reference for that was a poem?
Yeah.
Yeah, poem. Okay, right on.
Yeah. We got to be careful. And so, well, and some aspects of Paul. Again, it's just how they read Paul.
Yeah.
But but yeah, so like that's where your theological tradition starts to change how you otherwise understand that question. If you believe, like I don't think it takes very long for new creations to start defending the Savior Lord. I think certainly. I think God is ultimately good, and I think He is gracious and merciful, and He is just. And so, to the questions that I cannot answer clearly, I'm confident that He is just in. And so, but again, I was getting at, the theological traditions start to spend. The Reformed tradition would generally say it's up to God whether He chose that baby to be saved or not, regardless of a sinful state. The same way they would think of an adult. Whereas other traditions, like Dan was talking about, like the baby did not have the opportunity to sin against their Creator, and so heaven.
And so, okay, so I suppose the reason I brought that up is that was my answer as well, and I didn't quite give them an answer yet. I told them that I wanted them. I kind of challenged them. I said, I want you guys to go find scripture. I said, I'm not going to give you any advice right now. I want to see what you can come up with. Take this question. Hop into your Bibles, find something, look into resources, talk to other Christ followers, talk to your parents, talk to your pastor, talk to whoever about what you think this answer might be, and try and figure out what. Ultimately, I'd come back to the same concept that Dan had, which was, I believe babies to be sinless in nature and have the ability to sin, without the understanding of right and wrong, without the understanding of what is sin and what isn't, actions really don't fall under the gavel of judgment because of right and wrong.
I say we're born with the nature of sin, so when that time comes, we can choose right or wrong.
Right.
We will choose wrong.
Exactly. Yes. No, I
eventually.
agree with that entirely. But I guess that poses the question of, like, is there a cutoff to that? And obviously, there's really no reason to know the answer to that.
That's where you start getting in discussions.
Exactly.
To be honest, is that like the Bible isn't altogether helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like you'll go look. Like there's not a concept of age accountability in Scripture. There isn't. Right. And so, and the truth is that smart people who love Jesus diverge completely on this particular topic.
And I think I kind of set them out on a path for intended failure, because I wanted them to kind of run into that. Of sometimes there may be questions that we ask that we think are practical questions that have a lot of weight of babies go to heaven and things. There's certain things that the Bible just doesn't talk about. There's certain things the Bible does not lay out for us as specifically as we would want. And that's where, a trust in the fact of the just nature of God and the understanding that He is the creator of the universe and knows what things are good. That trust is an important part of that relationship. And so I'm very interested to see what they come up with, and very interested to see what kind of discussion. And so, that's why I want you guys to see what you guys see if I was orienting myself, at least in line, if not close to in line with other believers that I trust. So,
yeah, that's a rat's nest.
Yeah. So that's questions from the youth this week.
Okay. All right. Good. All right, Mike. What did you have?
Hang on. In Exodus 34, there's the longest description that God gives of His character, and He says, he's just talking about Himself here, and actually this is just after the golden calf incident, right? And then I think it was like 3,000 dudes stood steadfast in their rebellion and said, we're going to stick with this. So God wiped them out, killed them instantly, gone. And so the Lord's coming down to talk to Moses and explain Himself. And like I said, this is the longest of Yahweh explaining His character and the way He acts. And it says, Yahweh, Yahweh, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and the fourth generation. And so that specific of God describing His character came to mind when you were talking about this, because like basically if you look at what God's describing, He's describing two parts of His character, and one is His mercy and one is His justice. And like if you were to put it on a scale, you would start to see mercy start to weigh down and justice start to go up. So because they both exist in God's character, but the mercy way outweighs the justice. When He says, I have steadfast love for thousands of generations, and I will visit the iniquity on 3 or 4 generations, right? So he's basically saying when trying to compare some characteristics that Yahweh has, my mercy way outweighs my justice. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't even be here, right? You wouldn't even exist. And so, like, even when bringing up that question about babies and about kids or whatever, like, at the end of the day, if I don't believe that God is merciful and just with a heavy-handed mercy, I mean, what the heck kind of God I want to be following anyway, right? Like, it just cannot seem to even with all the legal arguments you could probably make with pulling Scripture together, you're looking at God's character as a whole and the way that He has interacted with people who have willfully sinned against Him. Not to mention children. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't seem to match up to me. Sorry, I was super excited that I had a scripture come to mind when we were talking about.
Yeah, that's really good. I appreciate that.
Okay. Dear, oh man, it's from Iowa. Crap. Dear Live from the Path, I have a friend who constantly talks about all the negative politics going on today. I'm sick of hearing it. Not because I don't care or disagree, but it has become the topic of every conversation. She's extremely depressed, has major anxiety issues, and, despite seeing a therapist, her condition has not only not improved, but has gotten worse. I feel it has become a one-way conversation, and she's not interested in listening to me. This is extremely upsetting because my husband passed away 2 years ago, and she doesn't want to hear about it. She thinks it is less important since it only affects me, and I should have gotten over it by now. My husband and I were married 30 years, and his death was sudden and unexpected. Please help me get through this difficult time. Overwhelmed in Iowa.
Boy.
Ooh, wait a minute.
This is about 2 things.
Yeah, what happened?
To find some good friends.
Yeah. The letter started out is, I have this friend who all they want to do is talk about politics. But then she's like, but really, I want to talk about the fact that my husband has passed away.
Yeah,
and I'm
she's
lonely.
Grieving. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've made this completely about 2 things. You should have wrote 2 separate letters. One, I have an obnoxious friend who wants to talk about politics all the time. What should I do? And 2, I'm lonely. My husband passed away, and I feel like I've incurred a great loss. Because 2 years, nothing. That is nothing in the amount of time that your husband has passed away. It's still a big deal.
Yeah.
And so these are just 2 separate scenarios. So let's answer the one first. Over politicized friends, all they want to do is talk about politics.
Well, if it was on Facebook, I'd unfriend him.
Yeah.
So do it for real.
Yeah, I stopped hanging out with
Get
people
on with your
that
life.
act like that.
Yeah.
Now, see, people now they want to come back at you, Dan, and say, look, your job as a Christ follower is to be friends with everybody and find a common ground and a common way to hang out with these people.
Well, I don't have to hear your junk.
Yeah. Dan says, I don't care what the gospel says.
Whatever.
I'm out.
I'll throw you a few Jesus memes, and you can throw me your political stuff. And
Yeah, I don't think that's the Christ. It's not the Christ followers' liability to otherwise, I don't know, present themselves to anything that you want to talk about simply for the opportunity to potentially ever talk to you about Jesus.
Well, and I feel like you have massive examples from Jesus' life. Like, you don't see him standing around suffering fools for very long, right? Like, he says, hey, you want to follow me? Sell all your stuff. Wah, wah, wah. There he goes. You know what I'm saying? He's not like, hey, come back. We need to talk more.
you don't hear him on every street corner talking about Herod.
Yeah.
He's talking about the kingdom.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And on top of the fact is, I think we were just talking about this last week. I was talking about this last week with somebody. But, like, we were talking about when someone sins, right? And like, you go to talk to them and they're not buying it, you know? And then you bring 2 more dudes and they're still not having it. And then you drag them in front of the church and say, listen, you're doing this thing and we need to, we're all heading the same direction here. What are you doing with yourself? And he's like, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. And then the Bible says, and then treat him like a tax collector. And then if you look at Jesus' life, he treats tax collectors pretty well. You know what I'm saying? He's super open to him. He talks the gospel to him. He doesn't like swing by and kick him. And so, like, these people fall in the same category, right? Like, you don't have to sit around and suffer fools. You still have to love them and want them to be part of the kingdom. But, like, it certainly does not obligate you to get involved in their wheel of destruction. And if that's all they want to do is be mad all the time, that's generally what one-way political conversations are. You're upset about something. They want to be. That's all they want to be is upset. You don't have any obligation as a Christ follower to participate. 0. 2, my husband's lonely. My husband passed away 2 years ago, and my self-aggrandizing friend who wants to talk about politics will not discuss it with me.
It says she's not much of a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand her world is upside down because Hillary didn't win. That's probably what the situation is. Or whoever. It doesn't matter who. You got to move on. Grow up. Be a friend. Or this gal just needs to find friendship somewhere else because it's 2 years is enough to go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I mean-
there's legit churches, there's legit programs, there's all kinds of people that actually would love to talk to you about who've been there, who know what this feels like and whatever.
That is real pain.
Yeah, it is. It's not anything to laugh off, and like you're sourcing it out of the wrong bucket, right? You're trying to get mop water out of a milk jug. Just she don't have it to give you, so you should just ignore that.
And when your world turns upside down, you don't care about politics. You're on the opposite end of the spectrum of this other friend, and that's all this other woman's in. So yeah, she's just going. She's expecting too much from this.
And you can have a certain amount of grace for some folks like that. Like
Yeah.
and I noticed that like obviously when we went overseas and whatever, and you go to a different country and you come back home and like people are talking about stuff, you're like, I just give a crap about what you're saying.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember I spent a weekend with some family friends of ours that their kid was in the hospital all weekend, and it was dicey whether this kid was going to even come out of this thing. And then I show up at work the next Monday, and they're like, "Hey, this thing broke up in eastern Iowa, and you got to get there. It's a big emergency." I'm like, "You don't know what an emergency is. This is the stupidest thing to get geared up about."
The air conditioner in my third car is just not working.
Exactly.
I'm really upset.
And like they're hot, man. You got to get up there and fix this thing. I'm like, that kid died this weekend. I don't care about this stupid air conditioner. I feel like I want to leave right now, And so like some of that's true with people who get wrapped up in politics. Like it is important. It's not like we talked about that with the government thing, from what I can understand of it anyway. Governments are important. I guess if I'm going to glean something off the top where the dummies live, like government is an institution set up by God, and so it is of a level of importance. But like that's all the better they have to do with their time. That's all the better they're going to do.
Okay, before you read the next one.
Yeah.
Well, you got to do secular, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, you said this reminded me of something that happened this past week. A friend was telling me about they were his friend, and I don't know if it's wife or girlfriend. Both of these two are divorced and they're together, and they visited a church for the first time, and they're at this church like in Norwalk area.
Yeah.
And they brought all these couples up to the front of the church and were kicking them out of the church publicly because of they were divorced, or it was all marital issues. Couples looking at each other like,
What?
yeah, that happened last week.
What? Wow.
That's
Yeah.
infuriating.
Yeah, I was just like, are you sure you heard that right? He goes, no, because he said, make sure and tell Dan this happened to us this week. Like, oh, okay,
What?
yeah, that's
How could you? It makes me so
Okay,
sad.
now hold on a minute. Maybe they've gone to them singly, and then they've gone to them with multiple people and said, "Look, you've got to do something about this. You're walking the wrong
yeah.
way."
We don't know the full story.
You think I'm kicking him out
and
tax
then they
collector
just
style?
refused. I mean, how many people do? Here's the thing: it's like I just ran across this tonight, where the couple has split up, and the guy's moving on, right, with another gal who claims to follow Jesus, like all while abandoning his wife and X number of kids over in a corner. And I'm sitting there listening to the story, going, what sermons are you sitting through where your just conviction flies away? Where you're not going, crap, it doesn't matter what they're talking about. They're talking about me, and I'm a big jerk. And I'm just like, how could people continue to show up at the Lord's service every Sunday, listen to the words coming out of the Bible, and pray, and not go, boy, you think they're talking about me? I feel like I should rectify this. And so maybe it's true. Maybe they're straight Bible following. They went to him, and they took two guys, and they brought him before the church, and they're like, we don't care. We're going to keep doing this. You know what? Get out. Get out.
Here's what you're struggling with, Buva. Church, the question is whether church is for believers. If church is a community of believers, this is completely right behavior. Assuming from Mike's perspective, right, that they followed the normal thing. But because it is a public thing, and you are open to people who are not Christians, it is like yelling at your kids or having family discussions in front of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Which is why in Corinthians Paul says, hey, this is the public assembly. Stop doing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
I'm just thinking about, like, I'm imagining someone walking into that church the first time, like you said, and that being what they see. And like, I can't even imagine,
especially when they're guilty of the
right,
things
exactly.
They're kicking
I can't
people
imagine
out
the
of.
distrust that would be fostered in that situation of, like, not just for the church, but for believing Jesus, because like we are representatives of this faith. We are, and like people look at the things that we do And that changes their opinions on Jesus. And it's wrong, but it happens. And like, I wish people would see Jesus for who he is, not by his fallible followers, but like, that just hurts me. Like,
There's probably got to be a better way to do that. Because you're right, man. I mean, that is a scriptural thing.
Yeah,
assuming
right,
scriptural things. But how you do it has affected other
yeah,
people.
and that was the point I was getting at. Is that like there's there seems to be the question is, do you have to do it in a public assembly? Is that actually the way to be handling some of those things? Now here's the deal: if that's your community, this gets into big questions on like, how big of community are we talking here? We got 3 services. So I got to kick them out in front of all 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Can you come back for the second service so we can re-kick you out again?
So I think like the context of some of those things, like I think the behavior can't go away, but the context is very much complicated by some of our structure, like the way that we do things. I think you have to recognize that the intent of the behavior was accurate, but it was set in a culture of which they did things slightly differently. The gatherings tended to be smaller. They tend to be in people's houses, right? So you're not talking about public buildings where people are intentionally being invited into, come and see what this is, and then you're showing people what is ultimately could be proper behavior, but it's family business. It's like having kitchen table conversations on street corners with megaphones. Like it's not, the venue and the environment isn't right for it. But we got a lot of times we throw like and I don't know, like I haven't had to do this yet, but like some of those church discipline issues, like we're pansy-ish. Like we don't do things like we say, I know better than God in this situation. I'm going to handle it differently. I will be softer than he is, and then you don't get to. We're not administering the church the way that we're supposed to. But like, I agree. I think it's the environment.
I've never been in a situation where they stayed long enough to be in a public way. Usually they'll leave.
Yeah.
By the 3rd meeting or something, they're like, "Okay, we're out."
Yeah. We're not going to keep showing up.
Who knows what happened behind the scenes there? But
yeah,
maybe it was a shock to all of them. Who knows that?
I mean, why would you show up if
why
you
would
knew
you
it was
go
going to
on
happen that
stage?
day?
Yeah, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm out."
Once you saw adulteral John on his way up, and then all of a sudden you see divorced Patty who's screwing around with the neighbor, and you're like, "Hey man, I don't think I want to go up there.
Yeah.
This is rough company."
Shirt has a big A on it.
Yeah. Boy, read the writing on the wall, friends. They're gonna publicly slay you. You know what I'm saying?
Boy,
Yeah.
that is. I mean, that would have been super weird.
Yeah.
Super weird.
Okay. I'm gonna hit you with the secular advice about the politicized friend. Please accept my sympathy for the loss of your husband. Because you are still grieving and your friend is unable to help you cope with your sadness, it might help you to join a grief support group in which you can air those feelings with others who understand. Ditto. Do it. As to your friendship with the troubled individual you wrote about, it might be healthier for you to step back for a time. You're not equipped to handle or help her handle her anxiety and depression. That's her therapist's job. Unless you can pry her off the topic of politics onto something more neutral, your time would be better spent with people who are better balanced. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to do one more?
Yeah, do one more.
Dear Life from the Path. I have one sister who is 10 years my junior. I have always lived in a big city. She lives on a ranch near a small town. I'm widowed now and recently moved to another town to be near my son. On 2 occasions, my sister has come to help me with unpacking and has overruled many of my decisions regarding what I will keep or sell, where to put things, etc.
What?
When I object, she become emotional and left in a huff. She and her husband were coming to help again, but beforehand, she had already told my son how they were planning to get things done. Anytime there's even a hint of a problem, she calls my son and tells him about it, and obviously only from her point of view. I'm afraid irreparable damage has been done to our relationship, and I don't know what to do. I have no other relatives. Please advise. You misunderstand your situation. Here's the thing. You put a lot of eggs in this relative basket. I can make pretty good friends without them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
My
agreed.
cousin turns out to be real pile of dirt. Whatever. I'll just get another buddy. I don't know that guy anything. I didn't tell his whatever dad to sleep with whatever his mom is. I had no control of this. Like, I'm tied to this man because we share some bloodlines. We all share bloodlines with Noah. You're taking this too far.
Mike says you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yeah. You gotta know when to hold up.
I mean, I just got here. You're going to tell me what I can keep and what I can't keep? Get out of my house.
Yeah. I wouldn't say you don't have irreparable damage. You just stop inviting her over.
Right.
Yeah.
If I've learned anything in the last 10 years, that his family is very easily chosen. It is okay to just go, hey, you're my family, but I don't think I want to be around you anymore.
Yeah.
Or
Thanks.
in this hyper-specific instance, I don't want you to help me move.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no.
Seems easy enough.
You're being bossy and awful to me while I'm trying to do my own thing. Please stop showing up.
Yeah.
I can pay a movers.
It,
I'll
it
save up.
shouldn't have happened more than once. Hey, I thought I brought you over to help. Hey, they weren't helpful. I won't invite them over again. Like, I don't ever invite someone to help me twice when they were unhelpful the first time.
Well, I mean, you know how people get power in these situations when you give it to them, right? When they're like, hey, you shouldn't keep this. And instead of laughing and going, you don't make any decisions here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Instead, you got upset about it. And you wanted to, and you let them, like, arouse a fight out of you. I mean, what are you, like 5? You know what I'm saying? People come over and say, hey, I don't think you should keep this china. Well, I don't think you live here.
Well, then, what kind of schmuck is the person that gets emotionally upset about you not throwing away a blender?
Yeah, really.
It's like, you got to get rid of this blender. I don't want to get rid of that blender. Why are you so bad to me?
Yeah.
Why are we like, excuse me, what? You're awful to me. I suggested that you get rid of this blender, and you said no.
Yeah.
How dare you?
It's like, all right.
Right, exactly. That should be hey, you need to get rid of this blender thing. I don't think I'm going to get rid of that blender. Okay, let's put this over here then.
Yeah.
What's
Sounds
next?
Good. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
You gotta stop letting people drag you around like that. I mean, there's time to take in good advice. If you're like, hey, don't even tell me what you think of my stuff, that's a little bit different. But like, obviously, your opinion does not equal the same weight as my opinion in my own home concerning things that I have purchased and purposely brought with me on the move.
What was the why does it matter that she comes from the farm? Yeah. Was that supposed to help paint the story that she's?
Yeah, it's like a Green Acres. You know, it's trying to like get a setup for a good sitcom.
She's a country dullard who doesn't know what to keep.
I'm a country bumpkin, and my sister's a city slicker, and she come in and give me the bosses.
My minimalist sister showed up and took care of my hoarder.
But isn't that the farmer girl that was throwing stuff away?
Yeah.
I had it flipped around.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Big city wants to keep the stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Farmer wants to chuck it.
Yeah.
All right.
Weird.
Secular's advice is, I'm sorry you are brokenhearted, but with time your broken heart will heal. From your description of her, your sister appears to be overbearing and loose-lipped. Unless you are willing to live according to her rules. Yeah.
Loose-lipped.
She's like to run her gab. Unless you are willing to live according to her rules, what you should do is hire someone to help you unpack and begin cultivating relationships outside the family that are less high maintenance than one you have with your sister. If you do, I'm sure you'll be much happier.
Is that a thing? You pay people, like, I get you pay people to help you move, but like you pay people to help you unpack.
Dude, you can pay people for anything. I'm certain it exists.
That seems like a very personal thing. Where like I would just have to sit somewhere and they go, where do you want this? Where do you want this? Where do you want this?
Yeah, right. Like I have any idea.
If you would like the fellas from Life in the Past to show up and help you unpack your things you recently moved, give us a call on the complaint line.
Yeah, we'll do it.
I'll help you move. I won't help you unpack.
Oh, yeah, that sounds.
I mean,
just
helping
awful.
you unpack is literally like me taking fistfuls of your underpants, putting them in my pocket, and carrying them around. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Ew, that was the weirdest possible
No,
way
it's
to put
it's
that.
not like that.
It's exactly
I don't think
like
it's all like
At all.
Yes, it is.
What?
Yes, it
Mike,
is.
that was an awful
Have I worn them?
Yeah. They're,
Why are you putting them in your pocket, you weirdo?
Because
freaking creepy,
that's
man.
how acquainted I am with your personal stuff when I start getting in the boxes.
Mike,
If
I would
just
trust
bring
you
the
to
box. I don't know what's in there.
I would trust you to take my kitchen stuff and put it into the cupboards.
No, I wouldn't.
And I would never think that you would show up and be like, hey, Boova, I noticed that you bought the Fruit of the Loom recently.
I got the spatulas and your underpants.
Check out that these are in my pocket. I would go, Mike,
Yeah.
It is completely unacceptable for those to be in your pocket. Please leave my apartment now.
It is exactly how I said it was.
We've been friends for a decade. Please leave.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
just
just
going to
saying.
happen if you ever do that, Mike.
Those are your personal goods where you decide where they go. Right? And so there's no reason to
maybe
have other
there's
people
maybe
help
there's
you
some
unpack.
boxes that are off limits. I think it's okay to unpack their fine china.
Well, and then there's this. Like when we moved here, there was a bunch of gals in the kitchen helping unpack stuff, and they all put stuff away where they thought it was cool. And Cheryl was just like, I haven't really had time to even think about this yet. They all left, and we just put it how we wanted it. I mean,
Yeah, right.
yeah, nothing got hurt. Nobody got mad. There was just
And nobody took underpants in their pocket, Mike.
everybody's
Except you had
underpants
to do
were
it twice.
down
Not
the
a
hall.
single time did that happen.
And here's the thing: when when that same person that helped you load the kitchen erroneously the first time shows up and says, "Hey, I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee," and they go to the cupboard and the cups are already not there, then they'll know
travesty.
that you disagreed with their decision and caused a riff.
Now, if they start moving stuff around, it's like, okay, now you've crossed the line.
Yeah, I think it's better off just to you do handle all the unpacking. It's your home.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but your own personal choices. I suppose you can make them how you want to.
It's like a fistful of underpants.
Call Fistful of Underpants Moving and Unpacking 515-517-0085.
That is awful.
We do text as well.
We prefer text. Please don't call us because we don't want to hear that name.
And the acronym for fistful of underpants is FFU. That's not good. We got to get a new business name.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, Kevin Lindgren will be on the show next week. He's got a new album that he's working on, and he could use your help. And so he's going to tickle your fancy with some tunes and tell you why you should support it. And we'll give you that Kickstarter link, and you can help out. And I promise he's not a homeless man in cahoots with non-homeless people to raise a lot of money incorrectly. I guarantee it. In the meantime, be faithful to the means. God will handle the ends. You've been listening to Live from the Path.